Orders. Today we honor the heroism and memory of 3 junior ROTC candidates killed while defending their classmates from the gunmen at Majority Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida on February 14th. These young heroes have been awarded the U.S. Army Medal of Heroism for services, the highest medal for Reserve Officer Training Corps. They are Peter Wang, Elena Petty, and Martin DeCue. Local Indiana veterans that have served and passed. Jim Lenahan, U.S. Navy, World War II. William Bill Hill, U.S. Army, World War II. Richard Hess, U.S. Army. Don Schmutt, U.S. Navy. Richard Hollinger, U.S. Navy, World War II. John Browserman, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Jack Tice, U.S. Army. John Schultz, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Ransom Sanderford, U.S. Army. James Pemberton, U.S. Navy, Korea. Paul Harmon, U.S. Air Force. Paul Underwood, U.S. Air Force. Robert Moons, U.S. Army. David Ralston, U.S. Navy. Ted Butt, U.S. Navy, World War II and Korea. Ray Edwards, U.S. Army. Charles Smitley, U.S. Army. Charles Longardner, U.S. Army, World War II. Lloyd Miller, U.S. Army, World War II. Charles Conrad, U.S. Navy, World War II in Korea. Charles Green, U.S. Air Force. Alan Walker, U.S. Army. Alfred Billen, U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II. Roy Crum, U.S. Army, World War II. Donald Hume, U.S. Navy. Bobby Lynn, U.S. Army. Kenneth Kahn, U.S. Air Force. Paul Kompler, U.S. Army. Robert Ritter, U.S. Army, World War II. Charles Heem, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Ralph Walterholt, U.S. Navy, World War II. Larry Fresher, U.S. Air Force. Kenneth Nelson, U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II. John Fisher, U.S. Army, Korea. Frederick Frieger, U.S. Navy. Neville Reynolds, U.S. Army. Alan Colt, U.S. Navy, Korea. Mike Mundray, U.S. Army, Korea. Wayne Robling, U.S. Army, Korea. Charles Peake, U.S. Army. Carson Spro, U.S. Army. Kenneth Miller, U.S. Army. Johnny Turner, U.S. Navy. Judge John Robert Hill, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Donald Rhodes, U.S. Army. David McAdams, U.S. Air Force. Veterans around the nation. Lieutenant Jim Downing, age 104, was the second oldest Pearl Harbor survivor, U.S. Navy. Norman Cray, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Craig Simpson, U.S. Air Force. Arnold Shayer, U.S. Army. Terrence Moncrief, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Kester Wells, U.S. Army. Raymond Yang, U.S. Army. Alton Addock, U.S. Navy. Willard Savage, U.S. Army. Alfred Kill, U.S. Air Force. Raymond Walter, U.S. Navy, Vietnam. Charles Jernova, U.S. Army, Vietnam. George Vasky, U.S. Air Force, Korea. Arline Michelin, Rosewood Riveter and U.S. Marine of World War II. Police and Fire killed in the line of duty. Officer Justin Villa, Mobile Police Department, Alabama. Chaplain Richard Pride, Columbia City Police Department, Indiana. Deputy Kevin Stanton, Brevard County Sheriff's Office, Florida. And Corporal Mujad Ramazine, Prince George's County Police Department, Maryland. And Canine Officer Roney, Houston Police Department, Texas. Rosie the Riveters, Alice Bonet, Jermaine Bollinger, Maureen Flenbaum, Edwin Fraud, Carolyn Hankins, Elizabeth Short, Ann Colzer, Dorothy Lewis, Rosalie Mills, Nellie Nelson, Bernice Qualls, Christine Walton, Beatrice Wolf, and Rose Janetti. POWs recently recovered: Army Staff Sergeant Leo Hosk, killed in World War II, February 22nd of 1945. Was recovered and will be interred this year. Army Corporal Leonard Perkapile, killed in the Korean War, November of 1950, recovered in November of 1950, and will be buried in his hometown later this month. Marine Corps Second Lieutenant Harville Moore, killed in World War II, November 1943, recovered in 2015, and will be buried in his hometown later this month. Sergeant, also present and